Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Dalton, and if you told me 10 years ago that I'd one day stand in my own kitchen, burned by hot coffee thrown at me by my stepdaughter, while her mother just stood there, watching in silence, I would have laughed. But it happened. That moment was the last straw. I knew what I had to do. Because if I didn't draw the line now, I was telling the world and myself that I was okay with being treated like this. And I wasn't. Not anymore. I was in my early 30s when I became a widower. I lost my wife, my best friend, the woman I had known since childhood. We grew up together, and somewhere along the way, we just became inseparable. Loving her was like breathing. She knew me inside out, and I knew her heart better than I knew my own. So when we finally got married, it felt like everything in my life had finally lined up the way it was always meant to. But life doesn't always play fair. She was diagnosed with breast cancer not long after we started settling into marriage. By the time we found out, it was already too late to do much but fight. And fight we did. For years, we chased every option: chemotherapy, radiation, clinical trials, anything that gave us hope, even if it was the tiniest sliver. I watched her body weaken, but her spirit? It stayed strong. She smiled through pain. She prayed, even when she was scared. And I stayed by her side every step of the way, trying to be strong even though I was breaking inside. In the end, cancer won. She passed away, and something in me died too. After the funeral, I didn't know what to do with myself. I threw myself into work hoping if I stayed busy enough, I wouldn't feel the crushing silence at home. But no matter how much I worked, the bed still felt too big. The house is too quiet. The food tasteless. 2 years passed like that. Empty years. I wasn't living, I was just surviving. People kept suggesting I try dating again, but the idea disgusted me. Every time I looked at the dating world around me, it looked chaotic, shallow, fast, like some crazy game with no rules and no heart. I wasn't built for that. I wasn't chasing hookup culture or hollow conversations. I had tasted real love, and nothing else could compare. So I kept to myself, focused on work, and made peace with the idea that maybe love wasn't something I'd ever find again. At least, that's what I thought, until Melanie came along. A family friend became persistent, telling me about this single mother she knew named Melanie. Said she was sweet, grounded, the kind of woman who makes a house feel like a home. I wasn't interested. I gave the usual, thanks but no thanks, but this friend wouldn't let up. Finally, just to stop the pestering, I agreed to go on one date. Just one. That first evening with Melanie. I'll admit, she surprised me. Not just because she looked good, but because she was warm. She asked about my work, laughed at my dry humor, and listened without trying to fix me. We talked for hours, and somewhere in the middle of that conversation, she opened up about her daughter. She told me the father died when the girl was just a year old. The story felt tragic, and I could relate. Pain recognizes pain. I agreed to see her again, and this time, she invited me to her home for dinner. I was nervous, but I showed up. That's when I met her daughter, a 5-year-old, full of giggles and shy stares. She called me uncle at first. That night over dinner, I saw something I hadn't felt in a long time. After dinner, when the girl went to bed and the house got quiet, Melanie and I found ourselves wrapped in a different kind of conversation, one that ended in the bedroom. I felt alive for the first time in years. That evening shifted something in me. I didn't feel like I was betraying my late wife anymore. I started to imagine life with Melanie, not just as a companion, but as someone I could build a second chapter with. And her daughter? I didn't see her as a responsibility. I saw her as a chance to give love to someone who never knew her real father. Things moved quickly. Dating her made me feel alive again. I grew to love Melanie deeply, but not just her. I loved her daughter, too. I treated that little girl like she was mine. I gave her the same devotion and protection I once gave to my late wife and the family we were building together. And for a time, it seemed like both Melanie and her daughter truly embraced me. It warmed something in me I thought was frozen for good. About a year into our relationship, I looked around my house, and realized it made no sense for them to keep living in their tiny apartment. I asked them to move in. They moved in, and things felt right. One evening, not long after they settled in, we were having a casual conversation. I can't even remember how it started. And Melanie mentioned it had always been her dream to be married someday. It was just a passing comment, but I heard it and filed it away in my heart. On our second anniversary, I got down on one knee in our living room and proposed. She cried and said yes. It was a beautiful moment. We got legally married a few months later, and for a while, everything felt like it was falling into place. We had our ups and downs, what couple doesn't? But nothing major. Just minor arguments, the kind you shrug off after a good night's sleep. I believed I was finally getting my second chance at happiness, the family, the peace, the future I thought had died with my first wife. Little did I know, peace can be a fragile thing, and love, when not protected, can be taken for granted. But at that time, I had no complaints. I was content. I was trying. I was present. And I believe they were, too. Everything changed after my stepdaughter found out I wasn't her biological father. Before then, we were fine. I had been there since she was 5. I never treated her like anything less than I would with my own child. But when she hit her teenage years and somehow learned the truth that I wasn't her real dad, something in her flipped. Her entire attitude turned into something hostile, cold, and dismissive. At first, I tried to excuse it. Teenagers act out sometimes, right? I gave her space, thinking it would pass. I still loved her deeply and kept showing up for her the way I always had, paying her school fees, giving her allowances, making sure she had what she needed. I didn't change, even when she did. But the more I tried to hold onto the relationship, the more she seemed to push back. She would talk back, ignore house rules, and sometimes just storm out without a word about where she was going or who she'd be with. When she came back late at night, I'd ask, "Where have you been?" She'd brush past me like I was invisible. One day, I reached out to hold her shoulder to get her attention, and she pushed my hand away like I was a stranger off the street. And every time she crossed the line like that, I would look at Melanie, hoping that, as her mother, she'd step in. Say something. Do something. But Melanie never said a word. Not once. She just stood there like a bystander. That silence was louder than any insult. Eventually, I sat Melanie down and asked, "Why don't you ever say anything when she disrespects me like that?" Her face twisted immediately, and without missing a beat, she shot back, "What do you want me to do?" She was irritated, like I was the problem for expecting basic support in my own home. I stared at her, stunned. I wanted to explain, to break it down, but something in me told me it wouldn't matter. I'd already seen the truth, so I kept quiet. And from that point on, everything changed for me, not just with the girl, but with the woman I thought was my partner. Things got worse. My stepdaughter would walk in and out of the house whenever she wanted, no explanations, no apologies. Some nights, she wouldn't come home until it was well past her curfew. One evening, I happened to spot her down the street with some boy, clearly older, leaning too close, whispering something into her ear. They were standing in a way that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't cause a scene. I waited for her to come home. When she finally walked through the door hours later, I asked her to sit. Calmly, I told her, "Listen, if this is how you want to live, sneaking out, hiding things, disrespecting your own home, then I'll stop trying to act like I'm your father. I can't keep investing love and care into a role that you spit on." But before I could even finish that sentence, Melanie cut in, loud, defensive, like she'd just been waiting to pounce. "Don't talk to her like that," she snapped. "Watch your words. You're going to ruin her self-esteem." I just stood there, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I was, trying to guide her daughter, and instead of backing me, she turned me into the villain. It hit me right there. This wasn't about parenting. Melanie wasn't interested in correcting her daughter. She was interested in controlling me. In her mind, protecting her daughter's ego was more important than protecting the foundation of our marriage. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't her partner. I was just a placeholder, a man who paid the bills, who provided comfort, but whose voice no longer mattered. I'm a quiet man. I don't shout, and I don't do drama. So I didn't argue with her that night, but I made sure my message was heard. I was done playing the role of the family punching bag. That night, a part of me began to shut down. I started looking at the situation with new eyes that weren't clouded by love or hope. One Saturday morning, I came downstairs to make myself a cup of coffee, which is a part of my usual weekend routine. As I entered the kitchen, I noticed my stepdaughter already there, making hers. She looked up and greeted me, then said that she'd been waiting for me. I asked what for. That's when she said she needed money. She was going shopping with her friends and wanted me to give her some. Now, in the past, I probably would have handed her my credit card without blinking. I'd done it before, and every time, she'd spend ridiculous amounts of money. I allowed it because, for years, I treated her as if she were truly mine. I gave her the privileges of a daughter, not just because I married her mother, but because I wanted to give her the love and stability she didn't get from her biological father. But things had changed. I was done being treated like a wallet. Her behavior had crossed too many lines, and worse, her mother, my wife, Melanie, never said anything. No correction, no consequences, just silence. And silence, I've learned, is a form of agreement. So I had made a decision. I would stop financing the disrespect. No more free rides, no more credit cards, no more pretending this house was still running on mutual respect. So I looked her straight in the eye and said calmly, "I don't have money to give you." She didn't take that well. Immediately, she accused me of lying, said I hated her. Her voice rose, but I didn't match it. I tried to reach out, just to touch her arm and get her to pause for a second, but she pushed my hand away like I was filth. Then, in one quick move, she threw the coffee she had just made straight at me. It hit my chest and soaked through my shirt. I staggered back, more stunned than anything, not just by the heat, but by the fact that a child I helped raise could do that to me. And then she said it, "Go to hell with your money," before storming out of the kitchen. I turned to my right, and there stood Melanie, halfway in the hallway, watching. She had seen the whole thing. And what did she say? Nothing. Not a word. Not even a look of concern. Just silence. I pulled my phone out right then and there. I didn't wait. I turned the camera on myself and started recording. "This," I said, voice steady, "this is what your daughter just did because I told her I wasn't giving her my credit card." Then I turned the camera toward her mother, Melanie, who was still standing there, arms crossed now, like she had just finished watching a boring commercial. I looked her dead in the eye and said it plain and clear. "I don't want to see your daughter in this house again. Ever." That was when she finally reacted. She exploded. "You won't do anything. She's not going anywhere." Her voice shook with anger, not because her daughter was wrong, but because I dared to draw a line. That told me everything. Everything I needed to know about how little she respected me, and how deep her loyalty to her daughter ran, even when her daughter crossed the line into full-blown abuse. I didn't argue, I just stood there, watching the woman I once called my partner choose silence when I was humiliated, and choose rage only when her control was threatened. The rest of that day, I didn't move much. I didn't need to. My body was still, but my mind was working overtime. I kept replaying not just the coffee incident, but all the little things that came before it. That coffee wasn't the beginning. It was just the final undeniable proof that I had lost control of my own house. And somewhere between that replay and my aching chest, it hit me. I didn't sign up to be disrespected in my own home. I didn't marry a woman to become the punching bag for her teenage daughter's rebellion. If a man has to lose his dignity to keep a marriage, then it's not a marriage. It's a prison. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to live like this. I was done. By Monday morning, I had already made up my mind. So, I called a lawyer and set up a meeting. I went in calmly, explained everything. The lawyer listened, then told me the words I had been holding my breath for: "You have a case, and you have leverage." See, the house we lived in wasn't even in my name. It was under my mother's. She paid for it and handed it to me during my first marriage. I handled all the bills. Melanie hadn't worked in years. Her daughter? Fully dependent. I wasn't just walking away from this. I was standing my ground. I filed for divorce that same day and formally gave them 7 days to vacate the house. It wasn't an emotional threat. It was a legal move. But Melanie laughed and said I wouldn't dare. They didn't leave. They dug in. And just like that, we were headed to court. Now, standing in that courtroom, I didn't feel angry. I felt disappointed. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of loving, caring, and providing. 10 years of being the man they could lean on. Now reduced to legal documents, court dates, and lawyers going back and forth about divorce, property, and rights. I kept thinking, how did we get here? Looking back, there are things I wish I knew before marrying someone with a child. If the child's respect is optional, your peace will never be guaranteed. If the parent won't back you up when discipline is needed, you'll always be the villain. You're not just marrying a person. You're walking into a system that may never accept you, no matter what you give. These aren't bitter lessons. They're real ones. And I share them now, because someone watching this might still have time to ask the hard questions before it's too late. So now I ask you, what would you do if you were in my shoes? You give everything. You protect, provide, love. And in the end, you're left with scars and silence. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And who knows, maybe your answer will help someone else make the right decision before they give away 10 years to the wrong people. Thank you for watching.